Jessica had exactly $47 in her checking account when her phone rang that Tuesday afternoon. She stared at the hospital bill on her kitchen table, the one with red letters that screamed final notice across the top. $23,000. That's what her brother's chemotherapy cost this month. Alone, she picked up the phone without checking the caller ID. Maybe it was the hospital calling to set up another payment plan she couldn't afford. Is this Jessica Rodriguez? A woman's voice, professional and crisp. Yes, this is her. My name is Patricia from Elite Medical Staffing. Your resume came across my desk and I have a private nursing position that might interest you. Are you available to talk? Jessica glanced at the clock. She had 2 hours before her night shift at County General started. I'm listening. The position is live-in care for a single patient. The pay is $12,000 per month for a 6-month contract. Jessica almost dropped her phone. That was 3 times what she made now, and she already worked 60 hours a week. What's the catch? Patricia's pause lasted just a beat too long. The client values his privacy extremely highly. You would need to sign a confidentiality agreement. And the position is exclusive. You wouldn't be able to work anywhere else during the contract period. Who's the patient? That information will be disclosed if you agree to the initial interview. Can you meet tonight at 8 o'clock? Jessica thought about Michael, her 22-year-old brother lying in a hospital bed 3 floors up from where she worked. She thought about the way he tried to joke even when the pain medication wasn't working. She thought about their mother who died 5 years ago, making Jessica promise to take care of him. Text me the address, she said. I'll be there. The address led her to the most expensive part of the city, where doormen wore suits nicer than anything Jessica owned. The building reached so high into the evening sky that she had to tilt her head back to see the top. Her beat-up Honda looked ridiculous, parked between 2 luxury cars that probably cost more than she'd earned in her entire life. The lobby had marble floors that clicked under her practical nursing shoes. A security guard checked her ID 3 times before letting her into an elevator that required a special keycard. The numbers climbed. 30 floors, 40, 50. The elevator didn't stop until it reached the penthouse. Patricia met her at the elevator doors. She was exactly what her voice suggested. Middle-aged, perfectly dressed, with eyes that missed nothing. Thank you for coming, Jessica. Before we go further, I need you to sign this. The non-disclosure agreement was 10 pages long. Jessica skimmed it, catching words like confidential, binding, and legal action. Her hand shook slightly as she signed her name. This way, Patricia said, leading her through a hallway that felt more like a museum than a home. Everything was white or gray or black. Expensive-looking art hung on walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city lights spreading out below like scattered diamonds. They entered a massive living room where a man sat in a leather chair facing away from them, looking out at the view. He didn't turn around when they walked in. Mr. Chen. Jessica Rodriguez is here, Patricia announced. Leave us. His voice was flat, emotionless. Patricia nodded and disappeared, her heels clicking away down the hall. Jessica stood there awkwardly, wondering if she should say something. Finally, the chair turned around. The man was probably in his early 40s, though it was hard to tell. A thick scar ran from his left temple down to his jaw. Another one crossed his chin. His right hand gripped the arm of the chair, and Jessica's trained eye immediately noticed the tension in his posture, the way he held his right leg at an angle. He was in pain, but it was his eyes that struck her most. They were completely empty, like someone had scooped out everything that made him human and left just the shell behind. I'm Daniel Chen, he said, not offering his hand. Do you know who I am? Jessica shook her head. Should I? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Most people do. I own Chen Industries. We make the software that runs in about 40% of the world's smartphones. I don't really follow tech news, Jessica admitted. I mostly just work and take care of my brother. Daniel studied her for a long moment. Patricia tells me you're a certified nurse with 5 years of experience. Trauma unit? Yes, sir. County General Hospital. I don't need you to call me sir. Daniel is fine. He shifted in his chair, wincing slightly. 3 months ago, I was in a car accident. Multiple fractures in my right leg, severe tissue damage, facial lacerations. The surgeries went well, according to the doctors. But the recovery is complicated. I need daily wound care, physical therapy, pain management. I've had 4 private nurses already. None of them lasted more than 2 weeks, and why not? Because I'm difficult to work with. He said it matter-of-factly, like he was describing the weather. I don't make small talk. I don't care about your day or your feelings. I need someone who can do the job without needing me to be friendly about it. Jessica thought about Michael's last nurse, the one who actually listened when he talked about being scared. She thought about how much that kindness had mattered. But she also thought about $12,000 a month. What exactly would the job involve? She asked. You'd live here. There's a guest suite with its own bathroom. You'd be on call essentially all the time, though most of the intensive work would be in the morning and evening. Wound cleaning and dressing changes twice daily. Physical therapy exercises 3 times daily. Medication management, making sure I don't do anything stupid that would set back my recovery. And in between, whatever you want as long as you're available when I need you. Read, watch TV, study, I don't care. There's a full kitchen, a gym, a library, Wi-Fi. Just don't leave the penthouse without informing me and don't talk to anyone about what happens here or who you work for. Jessica walked closer, her professional instincts kicking in. Can I see the wounds? Daniel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. He rolled up his right pant leg, revealing an angry network of scars in several areas that clearly weren't healing as they should. Jessica knelt down, not touching, but examining. She could see the signs of infection starting in one section. When's the last time someone properly cleaned this? She asked. This morning. That's not properly cleaned. You've got the beginning of an infection here. If it's not treated right, you could lose mobility in that leg permanently. So you're saying you can do better than the last 4 nurses? Jessica looked up at him. I'm saying I actually care whether or not you can walk again. Those other nurses probably quit because you're rude and unpleasant. But I've worked trauma for 5 years. I've had patients scream at me, throw things at me, and tell me they wished I'd die. If you think being cold and distant is going to scare me off, you haven't met enough desperate people. For the first time, something almost like a smile touched Daniel's scarred face. You need money. My brother has leukemia. 22 years old and he's fighting for his life. His treatment costs more than I make. So yes, I need money. But I also know how to do my job and I do it well. You want someone who won't quit because you hurt their feelings? Fine. You want someone who knows what they're doing? That's me. But if you want someone to help you actually get better, you're going to have to let me do things my way. Daniel was quiet for a long time, studying her face. When can you start? I need to give 2 weeks' notice at the hospital. I'll pay them a month's salary to let you go tomorrow. You can start immediately? Jessica thought about the final notice on her kitchen table. She thought about Michael asking her yesterday if he was going to die, and how she'd lied and told him no, everything would be fine. I'll need to pack some things and say goodbye to my brother. I can move in the day after tomorrow. Done. Daniel reached for a tablet on the side table and pulled up a document. Patricia will handle the contract paperwork. 6 months, $12,000 per month paid at the start of each month. If I fire you, you get 1 month severance. If you quit, you forfeit that month's pay. Fair enough? Daniel looked at her one more time, and Jessica could see him trying to figure her out, trying to understand why someone would willingly lock themselves in a penthouse with a stranger who'd already admitted to being difficult. Don't expect me to be grateful, he said quietly. Don't expect me to care about your life or become your friend. This is a job, nothing more. I don't need you to be my friend, Jessica replied. I need you to pay me so I can save my brother's life. Everything else is just details. Something in Daniel's empty eyes shifted just slightly. Then I think we understand each other. Jessica nodded and turned to leave. As she walked back toward the elevator, she heard Daniel's voice behind her. Jessica? She stopped and looked back. Thank you for being honest. About needing the money. Everyone else pretended they were here because they cared about helping me. Jessica met his gaze. I do care about helping you. That's why I'm a nurse. But you asked why I'm here and I told you the truth. Maybe that's the first honest thing anyone said to you in a while. She left him sitting there staring out at the city lights. 2 days later, she moved into a guest suite, bigger than her entire apartment, with a view that made her feel like she was floating above the world. And she began taking care of a man who'd forgotten how to be human, while her brother fought to stay alive 3 miles away in a hospital bed. Neither of them knew it yet, but everything was about to change. The first week felt like living in a beautiful prison. Jessica woke up every morning at 6, made coffee in a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine, and waited for Daniel to call her. He always called at exactly 6:30. Not 6:29, not 6:31, 6:30, I'm ready, he'd say, and hang up. That was the entire conversation. She'd find him in his bedroom, already sitting on the edge of his bed, his jaw tight with pain he refused to acknowledge. Jessica would clean his wounds in silence while he stared at the wall. Then came the exercises, him following her instructions with mechanical precision, never complaining, never talking. The first time she tried to make conversation, asking if he'd slept well, he'd looked at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. "I hired you to be a nurse, not a therapist," he'd said flatly. "Just do the medical work," so she did. She cleaned his wounds, which were worse than she'd initially thought. The previous nurses had been doing the bare minimum, probably too intimidated to push back when Daniel refused certain treatments. Jessica didn't ask permission. When she saw that the infection was spreading, she called his doctor directly and got stronger antibiotics prescribed. When Daniel complained that the physical therapy hurt too much, she told him that was the point and made him do extra repetitions. He hated her for it. She could see it in his eyes during their sessions. But she also noticed he was healing faster. The rest of her day was strange and lonely. The penthouse was huge, but it felt empty. Daniel spent most of his time in his office taking calls in a language that sounded like Mandarin, his voice sharp and commanding. That version of Daniel was so different from the silent, hollow man she treated each day that it felt like working for two different people. She explored the penthouse during her free hours. There was a library with books that looked like they'd never been opened, a gym with equipment still wrapped in plastic, a massive television that Jessica was pretty sure had never been turned on. Everything was perfect and unused, like a showroom instead of a home, but it was the photographs that really got to her. Or rather, the lack of them. In most homes, you'd see pictures of family, friends, vacations. Here there was nothing. Not a single personal photograph anywhere. Just expensive art that probably cost more than her car. 2 weeks in, Jessica made a mistake. She finished Daniel's evening wound care early and decided to organize his medication cabinet, which was a disaster. While she was sorting pills, she noticed a door she hadn't seen before slightly open. Through the crack, she could see what looked like a home office, different from the one Daniel used for his business calls. Curiosity won. She pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the city lights coming through the windows. But even in the dim light, she could see it was nothing like the rest of the penthouse. This room looked lived in. There was a desk covered in papers, a shelf full of books that had actually been read, their spines cracked and worn, and on the desk, facing toward the empty chair, was a photograph in a silver frame. Jessica walked closer, knowing she shouldn't but unable to stop herself. The photograph showed Daniel, but not the Daniel she knew. This Daniel was smiling, really smiling, his eyes bright with joy. He had his arms around a beautiful woman with long dark hair and a little girl, maybe 6 or 7, who was laughing at something off camera. All three of them looked so happy it almost hurt to see. "What are you doing in here?" Jessica spun around. Daniel stood in the doorway and the rage on his face made her step back instinctively. "I'm sorry, I was just—" "Get out." His voice was ice. "Daniel, I didn't mean to. I said get out." He moved toward her, limping badly because he was putting too much weight on his injured leg. "You had no right to come in here. No right to touch anything. I didn't touch anything. I just saw the door open and don't lie to me." He was close now, shaking with anger. "Patricia told me you were professional, that you understood boundaries. Was she wrong? Should I fire you right now?" Jessica felt her own anger rising. She'd spent 2 weeks cleaning his wounds, forcing him through painful therapy, working around his terrible attitude, all while worrying constantly about Michael, and now he was going to fire her for walking into a room. "You know what? Maybe you should fire me," she said, her voice sharper than she'd intended, "because I'm tired of tiptoeing around you like you're made of glass. I'm tired of you treating me like I'm some kind of servant who's not allowed to be a human being. I came in here by accident. I saw a picture of what I assume is your family, and instead of just telling me this room is off limits, you're acting like I committed a crime. You don't know anything about that picture. You're right. I don't. Because you don't talk to me. You don't talk to anyone as far as I can tell. You just sit in this giant empty penthouse, going to business meetings and pretending you're fine when you're clearly not fine. I'm not paying you to psychoanalyze me. No, you're paying me to help you heal. But here's the thing about healing. It's not just physical. Whatever happened to you, whatever you're carrying around, it's making everything worse. I can clean your wounds all day long, but if you don't want to get better, you won't. Daniel's face had gone pale. For a moment, Jessica thought he might actually hit her or throw something. Instead, he turned away, gripping the edge of the desk so hard his knuckles went white. That's my wife, he said quietly, and my daughter. They died in the car accident. The same one that did this. He gestured vaguely at his leg, his scars. I was driving. We were coming home from her ballet recital. She'd just performed for the first time. She was so proud. Jessica's anger evaporated instantly. Daniel, I'm so sorry. A truck ran a red light. Came out of nowhere. It hit the passenger side first. His voice was flat now, emotionless, like he was reading from a script. They died instantly. I had minor injuries. Broken arm, some cuts. Nothing serious. I walked away from the accident that killed my entire family with basically nothing wrong with me. The scars on your face came later, 2 months after the funeral. I couldn't sleep, couldn't work, couldn't do anything except think about how I should have been the one who died. So I got in my car one night and drove into a wall, on purpose. I wanted the outside to match how I felt inside. Jessica felt tears threatening but fought them back. That's why you don't leave the penthouse. I don't deserve to leave. I don't deserve to be alive when they're not. He finally turned to look at her, and the pain in his eyes was so raw it was hard to meet his gaze. So yes, I'm difficult to work with. Yes, I'm cold and distant. Because letting anyone get close, letting anyone see me as human, means I have to feel things. And feeling things hurts too much. So you just want to exist here forever? Half alive, hiding from everything? What I want doesn't matter anymore. Jessica walked closer to him, careful not to touch. Your wife and daughter, what were their names? I don't. Tell me their names, Daniel. He was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Finally, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, May. My wife's name was May, and my daughter was Lily. Lily would be what? 8 years old now if she'd lived? 8.5. Do you think Lily would want her dad living like this? Punishing himself every single day? Refusing to heal? Daniel's face crumpled. Don't use her to... I'm not using her. I'm asking you a real question. Would she want this for you? She'd want me to be her dad. But I can't be. She's gone. You're right. You can't be her dad anymore. But you can decide whether you're going to honor their memory by giving up on life, or by actually living, really living, not just existing. Daniel sank into the desk chair, putting his head in his hands. Jessica stood there, unsure what to do. Finally, she pulled over another chair and sat down next to him. My brother might die, she said softly. The treatments are working, but there's no guarantee. Every single day I wake up terrified that I'll get a call saying he's gone. And I think about what I'd do if that happened. Would I want to die too? Probably. Would I let myself? I don't know. But I do know that Michael would be furious with me if I gave up. He'd haunt me from whatever afterlife exists just to yell at me for wasting my life. Daniel looked up at her, his eyes red. How do you do it? How do you keep going when you're that scared? Because giving up doesn't hurt less. It just means the pain wins. And I'm too stubborn to let pain win. She paused. I think you're too stubborn too. You're fighting so hard to stay in this pain, to punish yourself. That takes strength. Imagine what you could do if you used that strength to actually heal instead. They sat in silence for a while, the city lights flickering beyond the windows. Finally, Daniel spoke. I'm sorry. For yelling at you. For being so difficult. You're just trying to help. I'm sorry for invading your privacy. This room is clearly important to you. It's the only place that still feels real. He looked at the photograph on the desk. Everything else is just going through the motions. Jessica stood up. Then maybe it's time to make other things feel real again. Small steps. But actual steps forward, not just treading water. I wouldn't know where to start. Well, for starters, you could try having an actual conversation with me during our sessions instead of treating me like furniture. I'm good at my job, but I'm also a person with thoughts and opinions and really bad taste in reality TV shows. The tiniest hint of a smile touched Daniel's face. That sounds exhausting. Living like you are now is exhausting too. At least my way involves laughing occasionally. Daniel nodded slowly, like he was considering something completely foreign. Okay, tomorrow morning. When you come in for wound care, I'll try to talk like a human. That's all I'm asking. Jessica left him sitting there in the dark office, staring at the photograph of his family. As she walked back to her room, she felt something shift. The penthouse still felt empty and cold, but maybe not quite as hopeless as before. The next morning at 6:30, when Daniel called to say he was ready, he added something new. "Good morning, Jessica. Did you sleep well?" It was such a small thing, but it felt like a door opening, just a crack letting light into a very dark room. Things changed slowly after that night. Daniel started talking during their morning sessions. Little things at first. He'd ask about Jessica's day, or mention something he'd read in the news. The conversations were awkward and stilted, like he was relearning a language he'd once known but had forgotten how to speak. Jessica told him about Michael, about how her brother loved terrible action movies and complained constantly about hospital food. She told him about their mother, who'd worked 2 jobs to put them both through school before cancer took her too quickly. Daniel listened, really listened, and sometimes Jessica would catch something like understanding in his eyes. 3 weeks after their confrontation, Daniel was in the middle of a business call when Jessica brought his afternoon medication. She usually just left it on the table and walked out, but this time she paused. Daniel was arguing with someone, his voice sharp and frustrated. When he hung up, he threw the phone onto the couch and put his head in his hands. "Bad news?" Jessica asked. Daniel looked up, seeming surprised she was still there. "The board wants to remove me as CEO. They're calling an emergency meeting next week to vote on it." "Can they do that?" "If enough of them agree, yes. They're saying I've been absent too long, that I'm unfit to lead the company. And honestly, they're not wrong. I haven't been to the office in almost 4 months. I've been handling everything remotely, but it's not the same." Jessica sat down across from him. "What do you want to do?" "What I want doesn't matter. I can't go back there. I can't face all those people, let them see me like this." He gestured at his scars, his leg. "I built that company with May's support. She believed in me when no one else did, and now I'm going to lose it because I'm too broken to function." "You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference." "Tell that to the board." Jessica thought for a moment. "What if you didn't go there? What if they came here?" "What do you mean?" "You've been handling business calls from here for months, right? So why not set up video meetings? Start attending board meetings remotely. Let them see you're still capable of running the company, just from a different location." Daniel shook his head. "They won't go for it. They need a CEO who can show up, who can represent the company publicly. Do they need that, or do they want that? Because from what I can tell, you're still making decisions, still running things. You're just doing it from here instead of from an office. What's the real difference?" "The difference is confidence. Investors, clients, they need to see a strong leader, not someone hiding in a penthouse. Then don't hide. Show up on video calls. Be present. Let them see that you're still you, just working differently for now." Daniel was quiet, considering. "It's not that simple. It never is. But it's better than giving up without trying." Jessica stood up. "Look, I'm just a nurse. I don't know anything about running a tech company. But I do know that you're smarter than anyone I've ever met. And you care about this company even if you pretend you don't. So stop acting like you've already lost and actually fight." Something shifted in Daniel's expression. "You really think I could pull this off?" "I think you won't know unless you try." The next day, Daniel called Patricia and told her to set up video meetings with the board members individually. Jessica helped him prepare, which felt ridiculous since she knew nothing about business. But she'd spent years dealing with difficult patients and hostile family members, so she understood people. "You need to look them in the eye," she told him as they practiced. "Well, look at the camera like you're looking at them, and stop apologizing for your appearance. The scars are part of you now. Own them." Easy for you to say. Nothing about this is easy, but acting ashamed just makes other people uncomfortable. If you act like it's normal, they'll follow your lead. Daniel's first video meeting was with his CFO, a woman named Helen, who'd worked with him for 8 years. Jessica watched from off camera as Daniel stumbled through the conversation, clearly self-conscious. But by the end of the call, Helen was smiling. "It's good to see you, Daniel," she said warmly. "Really see you, I mean. We've all been worried." After she hung up, Daniel looked at Jessica in surprise. "That wasn't as bad as I thought." "Told you." Over the next week, Daniel took more and more video calls. Jessica noticed him changing gradually. He sat up straighter. He spoke with more confidence. His ideas were sharp and innovative, reminding her that before the accident he'd built a company worth billions. But she also noticed something else. During his calls, Daniel would sometimes glance off camera, like he was checking to make sure she was there. It became a routine. Jessica would sit quietly in the corner of his office working on her laptop or reading, just being present. After each call, Daniel would ask her opinion on how it went and they'd discuss what could be improved. "You're good at this," he said one afternoon after a particularly difficult negotiation. "Reading people, I mean. You knew that guy was bluffing about pulling his investment." Jessica shrugged. "I just watched his body language. Same skills I use with patients who say they're fine but aren't. You should sit in on the board meeting. Next week." "What?" "No, Daniel, that's your thing." "I'm just the nurse. You're more than that. You're—" He paused, struggling for words. "You help me think clearly, and I trust your judgment. The board isn't going to want some random nurse sitting in on their meeting. I don't care what they want. I'm still CEO until they vote me out, which means I decide who's in my meetings." He looked at her seriously. "Please, I need someone in my corner." Jessica wanted to say no. This wasn't part of her job, but she saw the vulnerability in Daniel's eyes, the way he was actually asking for help instead of demanding it. "Fine. But I'm not saying anything. I'm just there as moral support. Deal." The board meeting was scheduled for Tuesday at 2 p.m. Daniel was anxious all morning, snapping at Jessica during his therapy session and apologizing immediately after. Jessica made him take extra pain medication and did breathing exercises with him like she would with a patient before surgery. "You've got this," she told him. "You know this company better than anyone. Just be honest with them." The meeting started rough. There were 12 board members on the call, and Jessica could see the shock on their faces when Daniel's video came on. Some of them tried to hide it, but others just stared at his scars openly. Daniel didn't flinch. "Thank you all for meeting with me. I know there's been concern about my absence and my ability to continue as CEO. I want to address those concerns directly." For the next hour, Jessica watched Daniel do something amazing. He walked them through every major decision he'd made in the past 4 months, showed them how the company's stock had actually risen under his remote leadership, and presented a detailed plan for the next quarter that had board members nodding in approval. But then Robert Mitchell spoke up. He was the oldest board member, a man who'd invested in the company early on. "Daniel, you've made a compelling case for your continued involvement. But I have to ask, what about public appearances? We have a major product launch next month. Investors expect to see the CEO. I'll handle it remotely. Press releases, video presentations, whatever's needed. That's not the same as being there in person. This company needs a visible leader, someone who can shake hands and make deals face to face. With all due respect, I don't think you're capable of that right now." Jessica saw Daniel's confidence crumble. His shoulders slumped, and for a moment he looked like he might agree, might just give up. Before she could stop herself, Jessica spoke up. "Excuse me, Mr. Mitchell, I'm Jessica Rodriguez, Mr. Chen's medical care provider. May I say something?" All 12 board members turned their attention to her. Daniel looked shocked that she'd spoken. 4 months ago, Mr. Chen could barely walk across a room, Jessica continued. His injuries were severe and his recovery was complicated by emotional trauma. But I've watched him work through that. I've watched him push himself through painful therapy sessions. I've watched him rebuild his life piece by piece. And you know what I've learned? Strength isn't about showing up somewhere physically. It's about showing up mentally, emotionally, and doing the work even when it's hard. Mr. Chen has shown more strength in the past month than most people show in a lifetime. Robert Mitchell frowned. "I appreciate your perspective, Miss Rodriguez, but—" "I'm not finished," Jessica said, surprising herself with her boldness. "You're worried about appearances, about how it looks to have a CEO who's different now, but maybe that's exactly what this company needs. Someone who's been through something terrible and came out the other side. Someone who knows what real struggle looks like. Because that's the kind of person who makes good decisions, who remembers that business isn't just about profit, it's about people." The room was silent. Daniel stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. Finally, Helen spoke up. "She's right. Daniel, you've proven you can still run this company. The question is, do you want to? Are you committed to this?" Daniel looked at Jessica, then back at the screen. Yes, I want to keep fighting. For this company, for the people who work here, for everything we've built. I'm not the same person I was before the accident. But maybe that's okay. Maybe I can be something different and still be effective. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it was enough. Daniel kept his position as CEO with the condition that he'd increase his public presence gradually over the next 6 months. When the meeting ended, Daniel just sat there, stunned. I can't believe you did that. I can't believe I did that either. I'm so sorry, I totally overstepped. Thank you. He stood up, wincing slightly, and walked over to her. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Jessica felt her cheeks warm, just returning the favor. You've been paying me to help you heal. Sometimes healing means pushing back. They stood there for a moment, and Jessica felt something shift between them, something that had nothing to do with nurse and patient, and everything to do with two people who'd somehow become important to each other. Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. Jessica looked down and saw it was the hospital calling. Her heart immediately jumped into her throat. I need to take this, she said, stepping away. Jessica, this is Dr. Patel. I wanted to update you on Michael's latest test results. Jessica's hand shook. Is he okay? He's stable, but we've hit a complication. We need to discuss treatment options. Can you come in today? Jessica closed her eyes. I'll be there in an hour. When she hung up, Daniel was watching her with concern. What's wrong? Michael, there's a problem with his treatment. I need to go see him. Of course, go. Take as long as you need. Jessica grabbed her bag, her mind already racing ahead to the hospital, to her brother, to all the terrible possibilities. But at the door she paused and looked back at Daniel. Thank you for everything. I should be thanking you. You just saved my company. We're a good team, Jessica said with a small smile. As she rushed out to her car, Jessica realized something had fundamentally changed. She'd come here just for the money, just to save Michael. But somehow, without meaning to, she'd started caring about Daniel too. About his healing, his happiness, his future. And that terrified her more than anything else. Michael looked smaller than usual in the hospital bed, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily in the quiet room. He tried to smile when Jessica walked in, but she could see the fear behind it. Hey, sis, you didn't have to rush over. I'm fine. Dr. Patel said there were complications. It's not a big deal. Just some side effects from the new medication. They're adjusting the dosage. Jessica sat down next to his bed and took his hand. Michael, please don't lie to me, he sighed. The cancer's not responding as well as they hoped. They want to try a more aggressive treatment, but it's risky. There's a chance my body won't handle it. What kind of chance? Does it matter? If I don't do it, I'm definitely going to die. If I do it, maybe I have a shot. Jessica felt tears burning her eyes, but she blinked them back. Michael hated when she cried. When do they start? Next week. But Jess, there's something else. The new treatment isn't covered by insurance. We're looking at another $50,000, maybe more. The number hit her like a punch. Even with Daniel's salary, she didn't have that kind of money saved yet. We'll figure it out. I'll talk to the billing department, set up a payment plan. You're already drowning in debt because of me. Maybe it's time to just accept. Don't! Jessica's voice came out sharper than she intended. Don't you dare give up. We've come this far. We're not stopping now. Michael squeezed her hand weakly. You've put your whole life on hold for me. This job you took, living with some stranger, all of it. I hate that you have to do this. You're my brother. I'd do anything for you. I know. That's what scares me. He looked at her seriously. Promise me something. If this treatment doesn't work, promise me you'll actually live your life. Not just survive, but really live. Find someone who makes you happy. Have adventures. Don't waste years being sad about me. You're not going to die. Jessica, you're not. I won't let you. She stood up, wiping her eyes. I need to make some calls. I'll be back tomorrow, okay? On the drive back to the penthouse, Jessica's mind raced. $50,000. She'd need to work for Daniel for at least 4 more months to save that much, and by then it might be too late. She could ask for an advance on her salary, but that felt wrong somehow. This was already a business arrangement. She didn't want to make it more complicated. When she got back, she found Daniel in the living room looking out at the city lights. He turned when he heard her come in. How's your brother? Not great. They need to try a different treatment. Daniel nodded, reading something in her expression. But there's a problem. It's expensive. More than I can afford right now, even with this job. She shook her head. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be telling you this. It's not your problem. How much do you need? Daniel, no. I can't ask you for money. You're not asking. I'm offering. How much? Jessica felt something twist in her chest. 50,000. Maybe more. But I can't take that from you. What we have here, it's professional. If I borrow money from you, it changes everything. What we have stopped being just professional weeks ago, and you know it. Daniel walked closer. Let me help, please. Why? Why would you do that for me? Because you saved me. His voice was quiet but intense. Not just medically. You reminded me how to be human again. You stood up for me in front of my entire board. You've given me more in 2 months than anyone has in years. So let me give something back. Jessica wanted to say no, wanted to maintain whatever boundaries still existed between them. But when she thought about Michael, about him giving up because they couldn't afford treatment, her pride didn't seem as important. I'll pay you back. Every cent. I know you will. But there's no rush. Daniel pulled out his phone. Give me the hospital's billing information. I'll have my accountant transfer the money tomorrow. That night, Jessica lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling a confusing mix of gratitude and guilt. Daniel had just casually offered $50,000 like it was nothing. Because to him, it probably was nothing. But to her, it was Michael's life. The next morning during their session, things felt different. Jessica was quieter than usual and Daniel noticed. Are you okay? He asked. I keep thinking about what you did. Offering that money. It's incredibly generous, but now you feel like you owe me something beyond just doing your job. Yes. Daniel was quiet for a moment. I understand that. But Jessica, this isn't about debt. It's about caring what happens to the people in your life. You taught me that. Before Jessica could respond, Daniel's phone rang. He glanced at it and frowned. It's Patricia. I should take this. Jessica stepped out of the room to give him privacy, but she could hear his voice rising through the door. When she came back in 5 minutes later, Daniel looked furious. What happened? Someone leaked a story to the media. About me, about you? They're saying we're having an affair, that you've been living here with me for months. Jessica felt her stomach drop. What? That's insane. I'm your nurse. The article doesn't see it that way. They've got photos of you coming and going from the building. They're implying you're taking advantage of a vulnerable man for money, or that I'm exploiting an employee. It's all speculation and lies, but it's everywhere. Daniel pulled up the article on his tablet and showed her. The headline read, Tech Billionaire's Mystery Woman Romance or Manipulation. There were indeed photos of Jessica entering the building, leaving in her car, even one of her at the hospital visiting Michael. Who would do this? Jessica asked. I have a few ideas. Competitors who want to see me removed as CEO. Board members who voted against me. Could be anyone. Daniel ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. I'm calling my lawyer. We'll issue a statement, threaten to sue for defamation. No. What? If you make a big deal out of this, it just draws more attention. People love drama. The more you fight it, the bigger story it becomes. So what, we just let them print lies about us? Jessica thought for a moment. What if you do a press conference? Explain the truth. Show them that you're recovering, that you're still capable of leading your company. Introduce me as your medical care provider. Take away the mystery. Daniel's face went pale. A press conference means going out there in public, with cameras. I know. I haven't left this penthouse in 4 months, Jessica. I can't. Yes, you can. You've been doing video calls for weeks. This is just the next step, and I'll be right there with you. What if I freeze? What if I can't do it? Jessica took his hands. Then we'll deal with it. But Daniel, hiding in here isn't working anymore. The world knows about me now. They're going to keep speculating unless you give them the truth. And honestly, maybe it's time. Not just for the media, but for you. Daniel stared at her, and Jessica could see him wrestling with his fear. Finally, he nodded. Okay, let's do it. The press conference was scheduled for Friday afternoon. Daniel spent the next 3 days preparing, practicing his statement with Jessica. She could see how terrified he was, how his hands shook when he thought about facing cameras and reporters. Friday morning, Daniel barely touched his breakfast. During their therapy session, he was distracted, going through the motions without really being present. You don't have to do this, Jessica said quietly. We can cancel. No, you were right. It's time. The conference was being held at Chen Industries headquarters, a place Daniel hadn't been since before the accident. When they arrived, reporters were already gathering, cameras ready. Jessica could feel Daniel trembling next to her in the car. "Remember," she said softly, "you're not alone. I'm right there with you." They walked into the building together, and Jessica felt dozens of eyes on them. Daniel's scars were visible in the bright lights, and she heard someone gasp. But Daniel kept walking, his head up, moving toward the podium that had been set up in the main lobby. He began reading his statement, explaining the accident, his injuries, his recovery. He introduced Jessica as his medical care provider and thanked her for her professionalism. His voice was steady, controlled. Then a reporter near the front raised her hand. "Mr. Chen, there are reports that you paid off Miss Rodriguez's brother's medical bills. Doesn't that blur professional boundaries?" Daniel paused. "I helped a member of my employee's family during a medical crisis. Many companies offer assistance programs. I fail to see how that's inappropriate." Another reporter jumped in. "But isn't it true that Miss Rodriguez has been living with you? That seems unusual for a typical employer-employee relationship. Miss Rodriguez is a live-in medical care provider. That's literally the job description." Then someone from the back shouted, "Are you two in a relationship?" The room went silent. Jessica held her breath. This was the moment that would define everything. Daniel looked at the reporter, then at Jessica. Something passed between them, an entire conversation in a single glance. "That question is inappropriate and invasive," Daniel said firmly. "Miss Rodriguez deserves respect and privacy. She's a dedicated healthcare professional who has done nothing but her job with excellence. Anyone implying otherwise should be ashamed of themselves." But then something unexpected happened. A man pushed his way to the front of the crowd. Jessica recognized him immediately from business articles. Vincent Park, Daniel's biggest competitor in the tech industry. "I have new information," Vincent announced loudly. "Information that changes everything about this story." Daniel froze. "What are you talking about?" Vincent held up a folder. 4 months ago, Daniel's car accident was investigated as just that, an accident. But I recently obtained evidence that suggests otherwise. The brake lines on his car were tampered with. This wasn't an accident. It was attempted murder. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters shouted questions. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. Jessica grabbed Daniel's arm as he swayed, the blood draining from his face. "That's impossible," Daniel whispered. "The police investigated. They said the police missed it, but my investigators didn't." Vincent's smile was cold. "And I have reason to believe I know who ordered it. Someone who wanted you and your family out of the way so they could take over your company." Daniel looked like he might collapse. Everything he'd believed about the accident, about his guilt, was crumbling. Jessica pulled him away from the podium as security tried to restore order. "We need to leave," she said urgently. "Now." They barely made it to the car before Daniel fell apart. "They were murdered," he kept saying. "May and Lily were murdered. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't an accident." Jessica held him as he shook, her own mind reeling. Everything had just changed. The press conference, the scandal, all of it was suddenly insignificant compared to this revelation. "We'll figure this out," she promised. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." But as they drove away, Jessica couldn't shake the feeling that they'd just stumbled into something much bigger and more dangerous than either of them had imagined. The police investigation moved quickly once Vincent Park presented his evidence. Within days, they arrested someone Jessica had never expected, Robert Mitchell, the board member who'd questioned Daniel's leadership. He'd been secretly buying shares in Chen Industries, planning to force Daniel out and take control of the company. When Daniel wouldn't step down willingly, Robert had hired someone to cause the accident. He'd expected Daniel to die too. The fact that Daniel survived had been a complication Robert had been waiting to fix ever since. Jessica watched Daniel through all of it, the police interviews, the media circus, the endless questions. He was quieter than usual, processing not just the truth about the accident, but what it meant. His wife and daughter hadn't died because of anything he'd done. They'd died because someone wanted his company badly enough to commit murder. "I spent 4 months hating myself," Daniel said one night, sitting in his office with the photograph of May and Lily on the desk. 4 months thinking I deserved all this pain because I'd killed them through carelessness. And the whole time the person responsible was sitting in my board meetings, pretending to care about the company. Jessica sat next to him. You couldn't have known. I should have. I should have protected them better. Daniel, you can't protect people from everything. Sometimes terrible things happen, and it's not anyone's fault except the person who chose to do something evil. He looked at her, his eyes tired but clearer than she'd ever seen them. How did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I've just spent a lot of time watching people deal with things that shouldn't happen. Cancer doesn't care if you're a good person. Neither do drunk drivers or genetic diseases or any of the other horrible things I see at the hospital. All we can do is keep going. Is that what you're doing? Just keeping going? Jessica thought about Michael, who'd started the aggressive treatment 2 weeks ago. So far, he was responding better than expected. The doctors were cautiously optimistic, which in medical terms meant they weren't preparing for the worst anymore. I guess I am. Some days that's all any of us can do. Daniel reached over and took her hand. It was such a simple gesture, but it made Jessica's heart race. I don't know what I would have done without you these past months. You would have figured it out. No, I really wouldn't have. He turned to face her fully. Jessica, I need to tell you something, and I need you to just listen, okay? Don't say anything until I'm done. Jessica nodded, suddenly nervous. When you first came here, I hired you because I needed someone who wouldn't care about me, someone who would just do the job and leave me alone in my misery. But you didn't do that. You pushed back. You made me talk. You made me feel things I'd been trying to avoid, and somewhere along the way I fell in love with you. Jessica's breath caught, but she stayed quiet like he'd asked. I know that's not fair. Daniel continued. I know I'm your employer, and there's a power imbalance and 1,000 reasons why this is complicated. But I couldn't let you finish your contract without telling you the truth. You changed my life. You gave me a reason to heal, to fight for my company, to actually want to live again. And whether you feel the same way or not, I needed you to know. The silence stretched between them. Jessica's mind was racing. She'd spent months telling herself that what she felt for Daniel was just professional concern, just empathy for someone going through something terrible. But she'd been lying to herself. Can I talk now? She asked softly. Daniel nodded, looking terrified. I care about you, Jessica said carefully. More than I should, probably. But Daniel, my contract ends in 3 weeks, and I need to figure out what happens after that. Michael's treatment is going well, but he still needs me. I need to decide if I'm going back to the hospital, or if I'm doing something else. I can't make decisions about us when my whole life is still up in the air. I understand. I'm not saying no, Jessica added quickly. I'm saying I need time to breathe, to think, to figure out who I am outside of being Michael's sister or your nurse. Does that make sense? It makes perfect sense. Daniel squeezed her hand once before letting go. Take all the time you need. I'll still be here. 3 weeks later, Jessica's contract officially ended. She packed her things from the guest suite, feeling strange about leaving. The penthouse had become familiar, almost like home. She'd missed the view, the quiet mornings, even Daniel's terrible coffee-making attempts. On her last day, Daniel gave her an envelope. Your final payment plus a bonus. Jessica opened it and gasped. The check inside was for $75,000. Her final month's salary plus a bonus that was more than she'd made in an entire year at the hospital. Daniel, this is too much. It's not nearly enough for what you did, but there's something else in there too. Jessica found a second paper in the envelope. It was a job offer, director position for a new medical foundation Daniel was creating.